We photographers are nothing but a pack of crooks, thieves, and voyeurs.
We are to be found everywhere we are not wanted.
We betray secrets that were never entrusted to us.
We spy shamelessly on things that are not our business.
And end up the hoarders of a vast quantity of stolen goods. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 200 for
200.
For the end of January 2024. 200 flipping episodes.
That's a lot.
It's, more than I was expecting to do. And to just get right into it, we've got our other fellow unusual collective brothers in light with us. We have Dave Szweduik and Mark Reierson. Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hey. And we're just getting right into this. We have no plan for tonight. It's like, what was I going to do for the 200th episode? I was like, I don't really care. Let's, just have more people than me and Ward talking about Trent Park or something like that.
Hey, that's fabulous. But Trent Park, I mean, come on. He's the man.
Yeah. Thank you guys for being here for 200.
For sure.
Yeah. And so we have no plan. And so if anybody's listening and they're like, these guys are not going to talk about anything, then you guys can hang up and we'll just go into it. Ward has got his beer or whatever he's drinking.
It's a beer flavored beverage. Yes.
Beer flavored. And what was the last time we did this? Was episode 100. We also had a few people on, but I never thought we'd make it. That's not true. I mean, I didn't think I would keep doing this for this long. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment, though. I mean, considering especially you do it, twice a month?
Twice a month, yeah.
I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So that's hats off to you guys on that. Now, I'm gonna put you guys right on the spot then.
Okay.
Out of the 200 episodes, they're both shaking their heads. No. Which one was your least favorite?
Oh, it can't be this one yet.
This one it could be. You can answer at the end.
The least favorite.
No.
Oh shoot. Damn. What was the least favorite episode? That is a good question.
Well, I can answer the hardest ones to get through. That one's pretty easy to answer.
Go ahead because
when we lost Elizabeth, right? Like those were hard. Yeah. Those were hard.
There was
one or two there where,
Yeah.
But it was they were worth doing, and I think you were very generous in sharing your feelings about your place in life and about Elizabeth, and we got lots of feedback from people who, think of Bart Buchatz specifically, who thanked us for that podcast.
Right, I remember he got on and specifically talked about that to his audience, and that was maybe not the least favorite, but I get what you're saying. It was the most difficult, and it was a challenge to think about actually doing the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I actually did a couple of shows where I did it on rerun, right? I think there might have been one or two,
mm-hmm.
because it was right after. But to do this show consistently and I could have at least that as an anchor, that was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that. So is that a good enough answer to you?
It's your show. I just threw something out to get you guys talking. That's all.
The least favorite show. Jeez, I don't know. And I can go back until when Tom and I were doing the episodes too, but I can't really think of that. Tom and I did a bunch. I mean, he went up to 50, at least 50,
mm-hmm.
before we signed off because he moved. So, but we always had a good time. Actually, I think the some of the least were my first episodes because we were.
Yeah.
Yeah, as just any first episodes are, like we were literally doing it in his basement, right? Not his mom's basement, but
No meatloaf.
we were in his. Yeah, I know we were in his basement sharing a microphone, and you can really hear the room, and it was just like, let's do a podcast, just like everybody else does. Let's do a podcast, and we started doing it, and I can't listen to I won't listen to those shows. I won't listen to those first ones. It's like. How we got some traction after that is beyond me. But yeah, those first like maybe 10 or something like that. I mean, they had spunk and nothing to do with our talent.
Right.
I think Tom was really good because he's a pastor. He was really good at speaking in front of the microphone and stuff like that, and he had a lot of good things to say, but I was more concerned about bad sound and sounding like we were literally in a basement.
That's what I'm in. I'm in a basement.
So am I. Or as I like to call it now, Ice Station Zebra.
Yeah.
I
hid my rafters with bookshelves though, Ward. That's all I did.
Well, that'll work.
Spruced it up. Behind this is just rock wall basement. That's all.
My son put a light fixture up that does a whole bunch of different color effects and stuff. I'm not going to bore you with it.
And we're not seeing this because
I don't know, because I can't find the remote among other things in this rabbit warren that is my son's desk. So
yeah.
So what about instead of least favorite? Because that's kind of a mean question, of course. What would you say are some of the topics or photographers or episodes where you wish you had remembered or maybe in the moment gone a different direction, something you want to revisit, go a little deeper on? And this is maybe a look for the next 100. Like, are there some subject matters, some photographers, some different things that you want to go revisit, go deeper on?
I'll let Ward go first.
Stuff I want to revisit. I'd like us to have more guests because they're always inspiring. It doesn't matter, what kind of artist they are. Is always inspiring, and it's good for us, I think, as hosts, certainly for me, to actually sit down, put the research in, and look at the work and think about their work and formulate some questions or at least an idea about what that person is about, so that you can seem intelligent during the conversation. I don't want to say interview because I think we kind of resist that. It's not like us drilling someone to get information out of them. It's more of a sharing. So, no, it's good. And what else? I don't know. I think I get the biggest enjoyment out of profiling other photographers.
Yeah, I do too. And I've got this list as long as my arm of people who I want to have on the show, and then people who have actually said they want to be on the show. Like I've already asked them, and part of this is just getting my act together and finding a time where we can all coordinate. And actually, Ward, since you have a more normal work schedule now, that seems more possible. So we're having some struggles here on one side. Sorry, Mark. I'm sorry this is all going weird here. I don't know if you're hearing echoes and stuff, but we're trying this new system here called Squadcast, and so we're trying to see all of our faces and stuff. And so it There's a few little bugs, but anyway,
It looks like,
yeah,
just to say, it looks like the video of someone recording a plane crashing. Is what it looks like from one of the passengers. It's like, we're going down.
yeah, there goes the window.
Yeah.
The window's popped out. Sorry, bad joke. It's not a Boeing airplane, is it?
No.
Anyway, yeah. I want to talk to photographers too, and actually by doing that and interviewing, I get my interview skills. I mean, interviewing, but like really just talking and pulling stuff out of people, because that's kind of what I'm into this for. I mean, we when we started the show, I think our first guest that we had on, Tom and I, was someone that he knew, who's one of the photographers that's a photojournalist. His name was Ron Haviv, and he was the first person that we got to talk to, and I was really excited when we had that. And when we were done, I was just on a high about that. And I've heard so many different podcasts with other people talking, and interviewing other photographers, and I was like, well, who am I to do this? And once I did it, I was like, hey, it was me. I got a chance to talk to Ron, and
Right.
and hear about his stories about the former Yugoslavia and stuff like that, and even just talking to people who I'm going to say were not like, a Ron Haviv, like someone who's well known, like people who I'd found through my Instagram account, and just even my friend Alex Ford, who's in the UK. He's just a guy who's a photographer who he was a soldier and then came over and started doing a photography business. Like just the bread and butter people too. Is a great experience. So I want to find more people. And there's a part of me that would say, well, can I do more than 2 shows a month? But, given that Ward is giving me his time in such a generous way, I can't push that. He's got a life too. And so, although I guess I could do it on my own. No, I don't want to do it on my own. I'm so glad that Ward joined me on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around the time where I was kind of thinking, because you had done the show solo for a period of time, and thinking, maybe I should think about doing something like that, or creating a podcast or doing something, and then the planets kind of aligned, and then the opportunity came up. And it's really good. It's keeping my head in photography on a bi-weekly cadence anyway, especially in the wintertime when I'm not working at all. I don't do too much winter work, although my son has got me out here a couple of times this fall, and before we got the cold weather, we've been out 3 or 4 times, and that's good. And then I've had this project last fall with the women, so it's good. This is a nice. I'm kind of finding it a foundation in my creative life, actually, doing this, thinking about it, going through my books. Sometimes when the show's over, Antonio and I share whatever's going on, the offshoots from the conversation we had during the show, and I'm showing off books to the webcam. And
yeah, and I'm looking at the book and saying, geez, I really wish I had that one.
yeah.
And then next week we see Antonio sharing in the Discord.
Yeah.
Look what I got.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Yeah, and actually I do want to do more about books as well. Because one of the things when I talk to my students, and I think it's really important, and I think, Ward, you're kind of what brought this back into my circle here is the act of, I don't blame you for me buying the books, but I realize that that's one wonderful way for me to dive into photography again on my own. I could sit here and look at books. And so I always tell my students now, it's like, if you really want to improve your photography, really just go to a bookstore, go to a library, pull out random photography books, and I really try to get them to do that, because I'm really, it's driving me crazy that they think photography is, Instagram, and so spending time with books, and we've Warren and I have bounced around some ideas about how to actually do it on video,
Yeah.
so that we can talk about it. Maybe not a review, but use the book as a prompt to either talk about the photographer or just photography in general. And I think if we can give that a try this year, that would be kind of cool. But it would also allow us to share books that neither one of us have. Like, I know, Ward, I think you got a much larger collection of books than I do, but it'd be kind of cool to like sit down and see your book and flip through it with you while we're talking about it. And of course, that's always tricky as a podcast, right? Because we're talking about visuals.
Well,
in an audio format.
You do have that handy dandy Street Shots Substack newsletter. And
that's true.
They do take video. You can post video right in the newsletter. And so that you could do the audio and just plug it. Hey, this is a special for our newsletter subscribers. Go see the visuals to go with it.
Oh,
makes it
right.
easy. Not
That's
to plan
option.
your podcast. I
No,
mean,
we're looking for
I'm
ideas.
just listening, but the idea pops.
Exactly. We'll get ideas,
Yeah.
That's what the show's all about.
Yeah.
I say it selfishly because I love listening to you guys talk about the books and the photographers and your deep dives, and I learned so much because you guys know I don't have the, I guess you'd say, I don't want to say formal photography training history. I mean, I'm definitely someone that picked it up, came to it late in life, and just read a lot of websites and books and a lot of podcasts and things. Just tried to learn as much as I could on my own. And I'm continually learning about these names that I never knew anything about from you guys, and I love it so much. So, selfishly, I'm just saying there's an avenue for you guys to to share it, but I will gladly listen whenever you put it up. But
that's funny because I think most people that I know don't have formal photography education. If our other unusual was here, Keith Goldstein, who just joined us. We both went to School of Visual Arts, but it's rare to find people these days who actually went to a full schooling and stuck with it. There's a lot of people who went to schooling and didn't stick with photography and now like doing other things. So
I should probably clarify when I say like a photography formal education, whatever you want to call it. I don't mean necessarily so much a school, but where I'm at up here in northern Minnesota, I mean. Even to this day, I don't have a bookstore I can go to that I could buy a photography book. And so I didn't have access to any of that till, when did I start shooting? Boy, it's been 20 years or so now, 15 years, somewhere in there, early 2000s. And it was only once the internet got bigger and I could order on Amazon or, when I'd travel and stuff, I'd find books. But that's the side I mean, where a lot of these names I hear you guys talk about, it's instant. All right, let's see what we can find. Looking at the images, because a lot of them I have no idea. Some of them I surprise myself and say, "Oh, I recognize that picture. I didn't know that was a photographer." But you kind of surprise yourself where things stick in your mind where you've seen them a time or two or maybe more, and who knows where that comes from. But
you're kind of reminding me when I was younger, like it was like a treasure hunt. Like I found this picture, and then you try and figure out where it came from, who shot it.
Right.
I love that. I mean, we've all got our different ways of discovering photographs and photographers.
Well, Ward, I got to give you some credit, a lot of credit actually, because my diving back into photo history and just all the photographers who I'm enjoying now, I really didn't. I'm not saying didn't access, but didn't really. They weren't floating around in my circles in my mind. I didn't have as many books and stuff like that. And again, I was coming. Remember, I came from commercial photography, and so I wasn't really thinking about that. And I was sort of like, sometimes when I'm in that world, I'm not thinking about the history of it, or I may not be saying this right.
Yeah.
But I'm seeped in photography in a commercial way, and I'm not necessarily, and this is just me, I'm not saying this is the way things go. It's just like, I'm trying to make money, or I'm trying to figure stuff out, and I'm not going to museums or picking up books all the time. And when I could stop doing that is when I can start thinking about photography as more of an art form. And then, oh, right, these people, these photographers these names I remember, you sort of, and we've known each other now for a little while, right? And I think when I first met you, I think you were already talking about certain books and stuff like that. And I was like, oh right, these guys are coming back on my radar again. These photographers are coming back on my radar. So I do have to give you some credit for that.
Well, thanks. I mean, I came from my earliest study in photography, like when my mom started getting me these books. It was basically history. It was the Time Life guys and girls giving you history of photography. And there's, Hero, the Japanese photographer, Paul Fusco, Leonard Freed, Gary Winogrand. The names are endless, mostly Americans. There's a bias towards American photographers, but that's fine. That's what I studied. That's what interested me and what was in front of me. So, and I have to say, maybe kind of derailing the conversation for a little bit, we talked about the podcasts that were difficult or that we didn't like. The ones we really liked and that I come to love now is when we were sitting at your dining room table together in your apartment, Antonio. And, it's my first visit to New York. We're walking in the footsteps of the great street photographers of New York. And, we did this whole thing. I'm really huge on time travel. We know this from previous, podcasts of walking in the footsteps of Winogrand at the entrance to the Central Park Zoo, and doing that. And I got my first real kind of street photograph of that family sitting on the bench, which was like an homage, as much of an homage as I could possibly provide to Winogrand in a place where he was a few steps away. So that connection, that human connection, not only to my friend Antonio, but to the location and to the practice of photography, whatever it is, whether you like my work or not, or whether I like my work or not, it's like you're steeping yourself in it, and that inspiration and feeling that you're really doing something that's important to yourself, whether or not people like that picture. And I'm happy that people are happy that they like some of my pictures. But just the act of being there and doing it was really important, meaningful to me. So that's that's where and it's funny because it lines up with, and I think I mentioned it either on the last podcast we recorded there in New York, or the first podcast after, where I said, a lot of my creative life was kind of lining me up to be ready for that trip to New York, right? It was like, that was an important thing, looking at these old pictures of New York from the 60s and 70s and trying to put myself there and studying the map as best I could before I went, and then walking up, this is the corner of X and Y, and here's where this train station, this is where I get out, and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like, in a way, never having been there, but trying to make myself not a tourist, make myself travel and be there and create there like I was a local. And that's what I've tried to do. So, but anyway, that's that. I don't know if that answered a question, or did I just completely derail everything?
You said that you warned us that you were going to.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, sorry, that's Canadian in me, eh?
I mean, thinking about, going back a little ways and realizing how I met all of you guys, and everybody who's on our server, our Discord server, through Sid and Mac on Shutter Time, and how they were they were the central, right? I met you through them somehow.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I think we did. Mark and I did the rodeo book on Sid and Mac.
Yeah,
Shutter Time.
Yeah, and so that they're sort of the seed of what's going on today, I think, is a sort of a continuation. So I do want to acknowledge both of them for having done that show, and then putting us all together, and then starting our Discord and our collective, and now, like, consider all you guys my friends.
Yeah.
Even though I've only met one of you. No, I've met Mac in person.
Mm-hmm.
And I met, of course, Ward in person, but I haven't met any of you guys in person.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter because we've got such a good connection in terms of what we do in our photography and how we connect with each other on our unusual collective, as it were.
Yeah.
But it's nice for me to go down that path a little bit and realize how much both all you guys have affected me in terms of looking at things differently. I think we've accomplished, we're accomplishing what the collective was meant to do, is to create this small environment where we could resonate with our work. And even though we all do different styles, but we have a common sort of objective, perhaps artistically or expressively, we want to do this stuff not in a vacuum, but and I'm of course I'm speaking for myself, but maybe I'm speaking for everybody as well. And I'm sort of moving the conversation in a different way, but part of what I like that we've done, and I talk to people again, I go back to my classes. By the way, I think I want to be a teacher. So I'm enjoying teaching and stuff like that. And I'll tell you a little bit about it if I remember to tell you about a class I just had the other day. But, trying to get people to make their circles a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. And the benefits of having, like, we've got 8 people or 7 people in our group. I can't remember now. Having that small, interesting group of people who we might expand slowly as we've had a couple people come in, but having a creative pool of people to go to outside of the rest of the noise is a sort of I'm grateful for that, and it's a privilege to have it with you guys. And so anyway, I totally went in a different direction.
I had to look something up just quick because what you were saying reminds me a lot. I read a ton, and that's kind of been a lot of my focus lately, but it made me think of guys like J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Williams. The guys back then, they had their author group, their literary group they called the Inklings. And I couldn't remember the name for sure, but our little group reminds me a lot of that, where, it's a fairly small group. And everyone's doing kind of their own things. There's some commonality, some, overlap in styles here and there. But through the core of it, like, even when there's, I'm going to say the word disagreements. I don't mean it like arguing, but I mean like, oh, I don't really like that shot, or, I love it or whatever. When there's those kinds of discussions happening, there's always this through line where it's like, there's a feeling, I don't know how to put it without it sounding super fluffy, but it's like a feeling where everyone, we're open, we're free to really express how we're really thinking about this thing, whatever it might be that we're discussing, but also like we've all got each other's backs in a way, where there's not a mean-spirited what you'd run into on Twitter. You say something on main social media, and oh man, what a mess it could be. But here it's like there's a desire for every one of us when we're having these discussions, kind of like a chasing down of seeking understanding, of okay, well, I'm curious, why do you think that, that kind of thing, where there's a genuine desire to want to learn and see things how we're all seeing things, even though it's all from different viewpoints and everything else. And that's what I think is so cool about this little group we've had going for a while now, is that there's just, I think we've said it before, it's like a safe space,
Yeah.
It's the internet off the internet we have. I think you referred to it.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like, for those of us old enough to know how the internet started. Yeah. It has that, for me, that feel. I remember when I started, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, but I started on a service called Genie. Do you remember that word? Yeah. You guys remember that? Yeah. And it was CompuServe and Genie. I'm really dating myself, but it wasn't like an open forum. You had to find a couple of people, and I ended up making friends with like 2 or 3 people. And I mean, at that point, some of it was gaming, I recall, but others was just a small network in New York, this place called Panix, PANIX.com. And it was one of the original sort of networking bulletin board places that had a real community feel to it. And it was small. It was a small group of people. And this is, as you were saying, this is just reminding me of that. And then, of course, everything explodes and everybody goes crazy after a while. But to circle back, Dave, is to and also to bring back in photography, like for instance, there was a commercial. I can't remember what it was for. It was for some insurance company, which, all right, wonderful. But the commercial was great because what it would do is it would show somebody walking down the street and they're looking at somebody else, and that other person is doing something like cleaning up the leaves on someone else's yard or picking up someone else's garbage. And they're looking at it, and then you see that person go off and then do something to help somebody else. And then someone is watching that person helps. And it's this like chain of people who are paying attention to other people and then sort of playing it forward towards that. And I feel that in our group, and as a sort of a specific thing, Dave, when we started talking about, I think you said when Ward and I was talking about liminal imagery and how we, or at least how I think I went back and said, I wonder if this is the kind of like the photography that you're doing. Yeah. Like it finally has, I mean, I don't want to put it into a category, but there was something that resonated between the idea of liminal images, or liminal spaces, I should say, excuse me,
right,
and the imagery that you were doing. And I mean, I'd like you to talk about that too, because so we can get back into photography a little bit. But that's kind of what was that's going on in our tight little group, is that we're finding these connections between each other and sort of feeding off each other. And so you're sending me information or your ideas about liminal spaces, and it's getting me to think about, oh, what is that like in the city and stuff like that. So anyway, I want you to talk about this.
Well, yeah, I mean,
this thing that you're coming up with.
I had heard that term before, liminal spaces and things like that. I never really knew what it was. I see the hashtag on Instagram for quite a while now, but never paid that much attention. And when you guys started talking about it, and you had tagged me in Discord and said, hey, I think a lot of the stuff you're doing might fit into this thing. You should look into it. And I started looking a little more, and I was blown away. Like, yeah, so much of what I shoot feels like whatever they're describing here. Now, don't ask me to describe what it is, because I still feel like, on one hand, I think I get it. On the other hand, I'm not positive I do, like what qualifies, what doesn't. And I don't think it needs to fit into a box. I think it's more of a feeling that it goes for. And I mean, a lot of the work I shoot, I live in very small rural community, back roads, dirt roads in the woods and things like that. And a lot of what I shoot, I don't do street photography like what you guys would do, in the bigger cities and stuff, because we just don't have it. I could walk our main street. I mean, right now it's winter, so obviously very easy there. But even in the summer when it's busy, I could walk Main Street and maybe see 5 people, just depending on the time of day, because there's just not the people. So a lot of my photos tend to be kind of these empty places where, humanity is there, it's present, but there's no people. So it's like that little bit of a, I don't know, in-between space. And then I had found this other term. I've been thinking about it, and I still don't know quite where I land, but I had sent you a link to another term known as a palimpsest. And I had heard this a number of years ago through a fiction podcast of all things, but it's kind of the idea, if you think about if you had a journal or a piece of paper where you wrote something in pencil and then erased it and then wrote over it again, there's still kind of the echoes of what was there before. And to me, in my mind, there's something turning around there where I feel like the idea of liminal spaces, that in between, the moment before something's happening, the moment just after, when things are just kind of up in the air, maybe a little more introspective, I guess you could say, you're kind of with yourself, you're just in that space alone. And the idea that everything you're looking at there was something there already. And maybe we see or hear those echoes of it. I think of it a lot because I enjoy photographing places where, maybe you've got an old gate that just shows up randomly in the woods. There used to be a road there. There used to be something there of humankind, mankind's creations, but nature is reclaiming it. And those kinds of spaces, I've always been fascinated by when you find those kind of oddities like that, because I don't know, something that just draws me to it. But then I think about these two ideas together, and it's like, well, there's that echo of the past. There's these things working together, and this is something that I haven't figured out what it means yet for me. But it's after hearing you guys talk about it, and then I wrote a little post on my my newsletter, and it's an idea that won't leave me. I keep thinking about it and keep kind of, I don't want to say wrestling with it, but kind of poking it from different angles, like, well, what is this? What is that? What if I look at it from this way? What does that mean? And how can that apply to photography or writing or any of it? So it's been, I don't know, kind of a really strange, I hate to use the word enlightening, but kind of, because I never thought of my work like that till you guys described it that way.
It's funny the way you're, because I had an experience very similar last year when I went to visit that farmyard where I spent some of my teenage years. And the whole thing about, one of the pictures I took just before I left the yard was "The Prairie Wants Her Back" was the name of the picture. And it was this house falling into decrepitude with the roof just starting to bow a little bit. It'll be a while before it collapses, but it's just like it's going to be gone at some point.
Right.
And so that part of what you're doing resonates with me completely. And so I definitely get that. And the feelings are complex. Like I used to walk around here. I used to sleep in this bedroom. I used to do this. I used to, and it's very, I don't know if you find any real meaning out of it, but it's certainly an interesting exercise. It allows you to visit other parts of your life, I guess, is one way.
Well, I think in terms of meaning, I think you're right. I don't know that it's defining anything that I'm going to set out and do like a new project or something like that. But where I do think it's giving meaning is in the ability to look at, so many of the photos I'll take that I'm like, yeah, it's a street I see all the time. To me, it feels very routine. It feels very like, yeah, I see this 1,000 times, but I like the way the light is, or I like this or that. And I can't always put a finger on why I took that picture, why I stopped in that moment to capture that scene. But this kind of, at least at the very least, gives you a little bit of a different viewpoint, or me at least, where I can look at it and go back through the Lightroom catalogs and start looking at work that I've done over the years and say, well, what's going on here? It gives you if anything, a starting point to start figuring out what really made me take that photo in the first place. Which, I mean, not that it's nothing, but to me, that's at least valuable meaning in that sense, from giving you a starting point, or me a starting point, I should say, because oftentimes I'll look through my catalog and it's just kind of like, I remember when I took it, I remember the day, I remember my thoughts tied to it, but I often can't put a finger as to why I stopped to make that photo or how it connects to anything else I've done. And I think that's what it's thinking about this stuff has given me at least a lens to start looking at some of this stuff a little differently, in a back catalog where I'll be honest, I mean, when the podcasting took over for me, because I've been doing it now, I don't know, 5-6 years, something like that. And I did a ton of it, and I do a lot of writing and all that stuff. And I still shoot, but I find that I'm not posting and I'm not sharing my work as much anymore for some reason. I'm just not a huge fan of Instagram. I got sick of shouting into the void and kind of felt like, oh, who cares?
Yeah.
I enjoy making the photos. I enjoy just feeling the camera in my hands, but I don't feel a push to have to post things all the time, which has been, both refreshing and also kind of frustrating, because it's like, well, what am I going to do with this then? Why am I shooting? But it's just, it's because I enjoy it. But this at least helps give me a little bit of a viewpoint into things and say, well, let's look at this. Here's something I hadn't really considered before. So that, I mean, to me, that's valuable, I guess, but everyone's
How long
mileage
have you
may
been
vary.
writing for? How long have you been writing for? Longer than photography? Longer than photography?
Yeah.
Or about, yeah.
Yeah, I started writing, I mean, really in high school. I had a fantastic English teacher that, I mean, he set me down the down the path of loving fantasy by, this was in like 7th grade, but, the standard, Hobbit and stuff, and then we went from there. But he also was just amazing in the sense where he really encouraged us to explore. He gave us the tools, and most of that stuff I've forgotten as far as like technical, lessons on writing. That's been too long ago, but just the love for being able to put, words on a page in as a way to, even if it's just journaling, verbalize something that, even if it's not to another person, I can't figure out a way to say in my head. And so, yeah, I mean, my first, it probably started with in high school, just, journals and stuff like that. And then blogs started, way back early, like 2099, somewhere in there, whenever my first blog was. And I've basically written on, on a fairly steady basis ever since then, various topics and stuff. But yeah.
But you weren't writing because you wanted to share with people. You're doing it for yourself, more or less. And then you just ended up finding, we can now share it and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's so.
I mean, I was going to say, like, you were talking about photographing and stuff like that. Well, why? And I'm not saying you're not doing this, but like, why not treat photography in the same way? Like,
yeah.
You're doing it for yourself, and
That's a good point.
Maybe you share it, but it's not the you say you get frustrated because you're throwing out in the void. Yeah, I mean, but it's not for them; it's for you.
Right. That's
so,
something.
Same thing with writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need to continually remind myself of that. It's and even. I mean, if we want to talk about this, sounds. I don't think this highly of myself, but I'm going to use a word here that'll make it sound that way. But we think of our legacy when we're gone, and I don't. You guys have talked about it before too. I don't anticipate like, I'm going to die. Someone's going to look at my photos, and suddenly I'm the next Vivian Meyer. That's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
But I do have kids. And I have a wife, and I have family, and my kids will hopefully have kids by the time I'm gone. And at least even just for them, there's that legacy of here's something this crazy old man in our family created, someday, that's my dream is like, when I'm dead and gone, I want to have like massive bookshelves. I'd love to have just tons of these old journals, full of all my random thoughts of whatever's going on, photos and, stuff like that. All of it so that they can spend days and weeks and years kind of going through it and going, wow, that's not what I thought he was like. Like I knew him, he was my dad, he was my whatever, but this is a side of him, this inner working
different level, different dimension.
That we never really got to see. I try and share that. They know, my kids know I do this stuff all the time, and they like kids, they're 13 and 15. So I get a lot of eye rolls. You're doing that again. My daughter hates when I post stories and stuff on Instagram because she sees them and she's like, "Oh, that's so embarrassing." But it's like, someday you'll look. I hope they look back at some of this stuff and they're like, "Oh,
of
wow,
course,
yeah."
Of course they will. They, we all are like that. Looking back at stuff. I mean, I kind of wish that, not to get any. Sad thing going on,
Sure.
but I don't have anything left over from my father, who was a photographer, other than like a handful of pictures, literally in a contact sheet. And there's family stories going around about what happened to his images, and I don't have access to any of that. I don't know where it went or whatnot, and I didn't necessarily care about this when I was young. I mean, although I ended up becoming a photographer, not because he was a photographer, it was the way things happened.
Yeah.
But when I started getting interested in that stuff and realizing I can't find his work, and so I anticipate that they may roll their eyes now, but at some point the legacy stuff is gonna, it's gonna have meaning because it has meaning to you from what you've found from your history, or Ward, you've like going into your history and stuff like that. That stuff becomes important, and then it becomes part of the the story of humanity. Your little piece of it is somehow fitting into the giant puzzle of humanness and the world and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's kind of the reasons I think we all. I mean, there's that part of that why we want to photograph, not because we want to get the thumbs up on social media and stuff like that. That stuff is all. I don't want to diss it. Like, again, I talk to my students because they're the only group of people I get to talk to now about stuff, and I get to say, you see this gray and beard, and you see the fact that I got no hair. That means I'm old, and that means I've got a lot of opinions. I tell them, and telling them about social media. But I don't want to diss it and stuff like that. I use it and whatever, but we have to remember that stuff was sort of imposed on us. It just sort of naturally or unnaturally evolved. And we're trying to fit ourselves into something that is someone else's idea of how we should, share work or be part of a larger story, which is not necessarily true, because those of us who were in photography before social media realized we were doing photography without having to. I mean, it would be great to have a show and have a book, but vast majority of us were like Vivian Meyer. We would take pictures and store them away, and we did it for the love of it or whatnot. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to, like, there's this connection between like wanting to be creative and realizing that we can only do that for ourselves. And if other people enjoy it, that's fine. If other people don't enjoy it, that's also fine. And actually, I was wondering that if now that you, Dave, know or have this idea of a category, or that oh yes, my pictures sort of synchronize with that, might that change you and how you photograph, because now you have some sort of awareness of that there's a name, perhaps, or a pigeonhole that your photography fits in. I'm not saying that's what it does, but I'm just, you know what I mean?
I think if it were another category, if you will, I could see that happening where I'm trying to think of another type, like, if the category I was in was suddenly people, start viewing my work as, oh, you're the guy, you're the Wes Anderson style photographer, let's just say, something like that. That might. But the fact with this liminal spaces and this palimpsest idea, the fact that I can't even fully understand myself if I understand it, if that makes sense. I mean, the category's there. I think it's more of something I look at after when I'm looking through the images after I shoot or whatever it is. I think it's something I look at more then versus when I'm in the process of shooting or making the work, if that makes sense. Personally, I can't fully define what that category is. Like if someone asked me, oh, liminal spaces photography, give me an example of 5 photos that do that. I mean, maybe I could think of, maybe an empty hallway, but even that's kind of generic, and I guess I don't know, So it's I think I'm okay on that side. I don't know that it will color the type of work I'm shooting, because I just shoot what's here because this is where I live, and if anything, it might urge me to want to try and document more of this place, and the changes. And you guys, even in talking about the just general photography and stuff, outside of that category, if you will, is something I've definitely felt pushed to do. And I talk with my dad every day, and we talk about, stories from when he was younger and how his, hometown where my kids go to school and where he grew up, oh, there used to be a grocery store over there and this was here, and how much it's changed even since I was a kid. And so there's definitely, I think, a little more of an awareness of that. But Outside of that, nothing really. I think.
I really like what you're saying about how you're not sure what it is you're creating at the time, like with this liminal project, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
I really think that really speaks to something, is that you're doing something you don't fully understand. I think that's where the real growth happens, right? It's sort of like you're on the edge of something. I want to do this, but I don't really get what it is. Yeah. And you like what comes out of it. I love that. I love the idea of that, because it's so much better than whether it's truly the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. It's a hackneyed phrase, but it could be that. It's just the fact that you want to go this direction, and that it's unexpected, and that is where some of the real meaning, I think, comes out of creativity in art in general, not just in photography. Anything where you're doing something that's compelling, that's giving you something you don't initially understand, or maybe never understand. I just wanted to say I really like the idea of that.
Wow. Thanks. I mean, I think I love the idea of being willing to just step out into that river and explore, see where it's going to take you. 'Cause I have no clue, and like you say, I'm just jumping in, but I love the idea of, constantly learning something new. I mean, you guys were talking about it earlier, and I was trying to think of how to put it, but Ward, you were talking about, kind of almost the feeling of being a historian of some sorts with the photographers you studied, and learning these things through Time magazine and all of that stuff. And then being able to somehow, translate that into, oh, I was walking in this space, I did this. And you're just kind of towing that line between being a bit of a historian, a bit of a student at all times, but also being willing to just throw caution to the wind and jump into the stream and say, okay, so I've got this knowledge I've learned. I keep learning more. Let's apply it and see where it goes. I love that idea.
Yeah, I think there's a maturity. There's a maturity that happens. Part of it is age. I think if I were younger and I was still, in that study, I'm studying all the time, but
who are you trying to
let's just pick Winogrand. And so let's say I would be in my late 20s or early 30s walking around the zoo there and listening, doing the same thing Antonio and I were doing, where we were looking at the actual picture where, Winogrand stood when he took this particular image. And a younger me would go, I would have to try and emulate Winogrand. I would have to, I didn't have confidence in my own technique or my own eye. And it was really until my 50s before I said, I figured out that, whether or not I think I have a style, that's more for you guys to decide, I think, whether or not I have a style. But for me, the creation of it was like, I'm going to do this. I know how I'm going to set the camera up. I know how I'm going to point it. I have a rough idea of where my frame lines are going to be. And I let's just go and do it. And I think that's sort of where you're headed there. And that I'm in this, for me, historical place, taking what I can out of it based on what I've seen others do, whether it be, am I aping them, ripping them off? Maybe to a certain extent, but the image is still me. The images that come out are still pictures I would take, and I love that idea. And I'm right there with you, Dave. It's exactly. And it's, you're talking about, going out and doing it and just jumping in. The thing I think the most about photography, aside from and it's funny because the actual images themselves, as I get older, mean less and less to me, even though when there's a really good one, it's such a huge win. And I feel really good about it. And then the baby's born, it goes down the river, and it's for the next one. What I really love about photography is if there's any planning to be done, you do the planning, you're going on this trip, you're doing this thing. Okay, what am I going to do? And I used to work downtown, and which wasn't that long ago, I think, and when Mark and I would go walk, and what direction are we going to go? We're going to go down this street or up that street and so on. And the whole idea of act of doing it, and Antonio and I in New York, like we're headed this way and the light is try and get the light right. Oh, there's a cluster of people over here. Like the act of actually doing it and then getting back and doing post and then editing it and then putting some of the images to social media or arranging to have a print made, all those kinds of things. Every aspect of the process I love,
Yeah.
And if there's disappointment, I screwed up this image, it's out of focus, exposure's wrong or whatever. I can't rescue it in Lightroom and so on. Sure, that happens. But other than that.
So let me ask, how would you, Ward, I mean, given what you just said about Dave's work, about like doing something that you don't understand, right? And going for it, because that's where the beginning of creativity is. How would you, I want to say, kickstart that? Because as you guys are talking about this, and I'm like, I know I don't do that. I'm a little bit more of like, I'm gonna say conventional, but I'm not necessarily doing what Dave does, is sort of pushing myself to some new understanding, and that's a place I want to visit. Just because I want to. And I don't do it often. And so maybe then this is for you, Dave, too. It's like, what's a way to sort of kickstart that in a way? And this is like for everybody else who's listening who wants to try to figure out something new to do or push that creative boundary by doing the unknown. And it's a big question. I know that, but
I think, honestly, you're already doing one of the things that I would recommend. Because for me, since, when all of this started, I don't know what that was, like a month ago, somewhere in there, a month and a half, when you guys had your talk about it, and then we've been chatting in the Discord on and off. So much of this for me, as I'm trying to wrap my head around it and kickstart myself and kind of give myself that nudge to look at other work and, keep shooting and everything, has been in the form of whether it be just taking the time to intentionally sit down and think about it, let it roll around in my head as much as it wants to. Let it come at it from any different angles that I feel like, but also it's the journaling, it's the writing, it's the, looking at other photos and jotting some thoughts down and saying, well, maybe this is what it's referring to, or maybe that, or, even just general journaling, like, the thought is there. What do I think of this? Where am I at with it today, kind of a thing. And I think the act of writing it, and I don't want to make any writers angry, but I think there really is something to putting physical pencil or pen to paper that makes a difference, because you are engaging your mind at the same time as your hand. That physical act helps you better parse through those ideas and better digest them, I think. It can do that even if you're writing, on a keyboard, on a computer, but I think when you sit down with pen and paper, pencil and paper, whatever it is, and allow yourself to be just present there and thinking about it and letting those thoughts flow out and everything else, I think that makes a huge difference. And for me personally, has been one of the things that has helped further this along for me in this last month or month and a half, whatever it's been, more than anything I've done with a camera.
I'm going to, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to, you finish your thought, because I was going to kind of turn what Dave said on its head.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Well,
oh no.
Maybe it'll
in a good way.
What I'm going to say in my head.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, okay, that's fine. I agree, and my experience with writing with my hand these days is so much different than writing on a keyboard. And since we talked about this until we were blue in the faces about the photo journaling, I've gotten so many. I've mentioned this to a lot of people, like in some different Facebook groups and to a photographer group that I'm part of, and even to my classes. And, all of a sudden I'm seeing people looking at that and saying, wow, what a great idea to do that. And I'm like, yeah, like, why? I said, I can't be the only one who's thought about this. This is not something brand new, But to see that people don't do this, like they don't contemplate, they don't reflect on pictures, they look at them for a certain amount of time and then move on, and they all want to be photographers, or they all want to be, and this is fine. This is just what goes on. But since I've slowed down, because you have to physically slow down, literally. I mean, it's, you can type much faster than you can handwrite in a legible handwriting. That act of forcing thought through the arm, from the eyes to the arm to the fingers to the, like, there's this whole, I think I could feel the connection. And spending time with imagery or concepts behind imagery or art does make a difference, makes a huge difference, and does make me think about trying different things, just because, I'm writing about something. I'm looking at someone's image or a concept, or I'm making connections between two other photographers and their images and maybe my image. And all of a sudden I'm saying, oh, here's, I like, what, to paraphrase Ward before, like, I could ape them, or I could use these sort of combined concepts or ideas or thoughts or feelings I have about a picture and start working towards my own. And so it's kind of harking back to what I said about, like, that commercial, or one person sees someone else doing something and it goes on. It's like, that's that kind of thing, but that happens within, my own brain or something. But sorry. So Ward, I want to hear what you're gonna. I want to hear.
Well, you've kind of suffered through me when we were walking on the street of. I haven't abandoned my journal altogether, but I find it difficult, and it is, I think, largely because with my work in computers, there's a lot of words and technicalities and abstractions that happen that are all in that language center in the brain. And when I'm photographing, I'm not verbal. I am not, I can look at a picture and the picture's not a description of what's going on, or even a description of the feeling that's being imparted by the image. It is like, oh, that's as much language as I can bring to it, because it's a projection in my head of all of that all at once. And I don't try and parse it out too much. So if you look at my journal, it is just tracking of my technique and a little bit of the thought process of, do I want to go down this route of this particular kind of image? That's all it is. It is not, it's, I struggle to, and I'm trying to find ideas or candidates that I could put images in. We've got that little HP Sprocket printers, those little printer. I'm trying to find examples of images that I've shot lately that I can put in there and talk about them, and I can't pull the information out of what it is I want to say in my brain and make it relate to the images. And so I just put the images down there and I talk about my thought process on the day. I want to, the pictures of my aunt who's passed away. I would want to say, whatever I do with this, it has to be dignified. That's all I can really say about it. So what does that mean? Well, that's just going to have to sit and spin around in my brain for a while. And like, how am I going to do this in post? Is there going to be any kind of public consumption? Maybe not. I don't know. So in that way, I'm a poor diarist. I'll give you that. But well, I think as time goes by and I look back at the journal, I think it will have more meaning for me for sure. But at this moment, I'm struggling to find the value in my brain of recording much more than basic stick figures of information about, like I say, my technique and of my thought process. So that's all. So you guys win in terms of like you have these fabulous, cool documents.
No,
that's not what I'm. No, I'm just teasing.
Win.
No. But I mean, you seem to be getting a lot of juice out of it, and I am not. I'm finding it a switch in my brain that I feel in a way is kind of taking me away from the camera. And it could be because I'm like what they say in the computer business, single threaded. You can only do one thing at a time. I can't branch.
Well, here's where I think what's different for you though, because I agree. When I'm shooting, I'm very much like you. It's oh, look at that, and I don't verbalize it in that moment. For me, that all happens later, sometimes months, years later. My journaling, I don't have. I hate to say it, but I haven't done a specific photo journal yet because I have a general journal where I just write thoughts, ideas, what kind of stream of consciousness, whatever. So I might be writing one line and talking about how angry I am that, stupid utilities went up this month. And in the next second, a thought will pop in and I just let it go and I jot it down. But what you do, I think, even if you're documenting just that simple stuff, the immediate sentence or two, whatever comes to mind on there, you probably more than any photographer I know, Ward, have this amazing capacity to you do your journaling in your head so much. Like you will chew over these ideas and you will let them percolate and you will let that all just kind of bubble and stew together until something emerges for you that you're looking at. For me, that'll happen some, but suddenly everything just is jumbled and bouncing off each other and nothing makes sense. So by putting it down in written form, that helps me get to that coherent space that you're doing in your head. So I think as long as you have something there that you're putting down that's going to give you the information you need later when you're thinking about it, it meets the same ends. I mean, we don't all write the same. Hemingway wrote different than Steinbeck writes different than Brandon Sanderson, different types of writing for everyone as long as it works for you. I think that's the key though.
Okay, good. Now I don't feel so bad.
No.
Actually, as you were bringing that up, I pulled out I started a new photo journal, not because I just wanted something that was larger. Right now, physically, I was using something smaller, and I'm realizing I don't have enough space to talk about what I want. And so, part of I can show it to you. Actually, let me turn off this background focus thing so that it can actually focus. You guys see that? So I'm showing a picture of my journal with actually these on the right are paintings from this person. What's his name? Wilhelm Hammerscheu, who paints in a style of like kind of like empty rooms with people in it, and just there's something very resonant about that. They look very photographic. And then this other page, I'm showing a connection between a Herb Ritz picture, Edward Weston picture, and a Vivian Meyer picture. And one of the things I've started to do with this is, I find these pictures that I like and I print them, but I don't write about them. I just stick them into a sort of a folder in the back of the thing. And when I get to the coffee shop or something like that, I start pulling them out and seeing if I could find connections between.
That's a great process.
Pictures.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think, when I'm looking at Ward can do this in his head and has a process, and I don't. Not saying one is better than the other, but I think I still have a lot to catch up on. And like I said, having done the work commercially and not paying attention, and then meeting you guys and starting to have to think about photography in a different way, which I just never gave myself the chance to do it. And so, for me, this is sort of like almost like going back to school again within myself. And you guys in the group, we share this, or I share these ideas with you guys, and I get feedback or start a discussion, and that starts the interplay in my mind and the ideas that start coming out and the concepts and stuff like that. And so, to me, I find it's very, and especially like I think I never knew about we talked about in the last episode Ward Trent Park. I never knew about him until you told me. I think you told me about him. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I've had the book for just about 10 years.
You've had that book, but all of a sudden I discover him and I buy the book, and I'm having this experience, which I think is something that you can, like, when I look at that book that we were talking about, Monument, to me, that's the kind of board that you would make, right? It's an experience unto itself. It's this whole, indescribable
Big shoes,
work
buddy.
of art. Huh?
Big
What?
shoes to fill, buddy.
But I think that's the kind of thing I think you're grasping at, or what you're going for.
I would love
your-
to. I ordered
in-
the third printing, so we'll.
No, I ordered one too.
Yeah,
so
so I.
it's like,
I'll let you know, but that's very kind of you to say that. I'm just.
well, and we sort of cover. I want to say cover all the bases. We cover a lot, and unfortunately, we don't have. Mark wasn't able to join us. His connection doesn't work, and would have loved to talk about this with him. We'll do another show.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
I found my old mic, or
Oh.
stole it back from my kid.
All right.
I just don't have video.
You don't have video. Oh well, but you do have audio. We'll say hello. You've been so quiet.
I'm back after a little bit, after an hour.
I've been worried about you. You've disappeared, but we're still on. We're still on. Come on and join us.
I gotta come in between all the bumps and loud noises in my house. I don't have a room anymore. My family is spread out, and so I got no space, no quiet spaces anymore.
Well, we all need that.
Not even in the basement. So good time.
It sounds like you're going to have to make a new space for yourself somehow.
Well, it's kind of in progress, but I just haven't had the willpower to do it lately. So my wife is wanting me to move my dark room.
Are you
into a
still doing
different
dark room?
spot.
Are you doing dark room work?
I haven't for a while
No.
now, because it got half moved, so it's half of it set up and half of it's in boxes. So it's 2 places and 100% unusable. So but if I get around to building that space, then should have a quieter space at least someday. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, are you doing any shooting lately, or
No.
even going through your old stuff?
No, I haven't done anything new for a long time. A lot of it was due to just the work situation, just draining and all, like physically, psychologically, emotionally. It's just a bad scene. So I feel like a little bit recovering from that. Although I'm gonna get popcorn noises. You guys talk, and then I'll come back in like 3 minutes.
Now I want popcorn. Geez, I have a dark room again. I actually was thinking about, like, if I could set up a dark room again and figure out a way to dry negatives without getting like cat fur on them. And there's some way to create a like a vacuum sealed or airtight drying cabinet, which I could hang up and then do film again. But I don't know. The thought of doing film again is just, oh boy, it's a little bit of a headache, and then thinking about all the chemistry and stuff like that. And I don't think you can just dump chemistry now down your sink. Although I don't know.
We used to say if you pour them all
I
at
do.
once, it'll be a neutral pH. It'll be fine.
I guess it's okay because the crap we pour down the sink now anyway, Mr. Clean and all this other garbage. How much
Yes.
worse can Dettol and D76 be or whatever? So yeah, I mean,
For my popcorn experience here, I was going to say, I was realizing, I think, that this year's the 10th anniversary, which is a disturbing thing to say, of when I did my 100 Strangers photo series. I started in about this time in 2014. So I was thinking I should dig those up and repost them.
so remind us what
Whatever
that
it is.
was, because there's
I was
probably
a-
people who don't know that you did this project.
Oh yeah, I found it. There was a group, and I don't know if it's still on Flickr. I haven't been on Flickr for a while, but and it's like a self-directed challenge where you approach 100, or the goal is to approach 100 strangers on the street and take their portrait. And so, yeah, I decided to do that in 2014. And I think, I can't remember if it took me a year to finish it or if I finished it by September. Now it's fuzzy whether I finished in that. I think I did finish by September, so it took me like 6 or 8 months to do this. That's when I met Ward, when I was in the middle of that project.
Yeah.
So,
and Mark is like the best I've ever seen at luring women, especially. Hey, you want to come into this back alley and I'll take your picture?
No. What's the Cunningham at what's
Bill
his name
Cunningham,
in New York? There,
Bill Cunningham.
Bill. Yeah, they'd say he's the master. But
he wore a seersucker suit and rode a bicycle around the place.
Fair enough.
He had that appeal to him.
Actually, I think there was a couple of reasons why I did that project, because I think it was a time I was involved. It was it was really early when I was seriously learning, and all the books are like, you can't take pictures at noon because the light sucks, blah 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 blah. And so I kind of just took it as a challenge to, I'm going to do portraits at lunchtime in the middle of the day. And so the whole book, I would say, trying to think through, I think most, if not all, were taken between like 11 a.m. and 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And so, I think it was just a huge learning experience for using light. And I think it was really that project that got me thinking about, I think a lot of people think about photography as taking the subject. But I think of it more as the subject is just the canvas for the light. When one Ward was downtown, we were walking around a lot downtown. That's really what, it's what I was looking for all the time. And the downtowns are really, well, at least our city downtown is really great for the light through the buildings and reflecting and just creating all this crazy shadow and light geometry. And then the winter light is even more spectacular because of the low angle. So you kind of cheat at that kind of blue hour all the time. But yeah.
And in the middle of your city, you've got all those glass reflections too, right?
Yeah, we got a lot of glass buildings for sure, which makes
so you get that especially when you get that light that's low, it just bounces all around the place. So you get these crazy.
I call it crossfire.
That's what you call it?
Yeah, because light reflects from the light that you're getting is from a building across the street. This glare.
Or from several blocks away that's bounced through this tunnel of light, and it's crazy. Like sometimes you're looking at something and you're like, where is that light coming from? Because it shouldn't be here. I can't even see the sun.
It's like a movie light shining a pool on some other building, and where is this coming from exactly?
Yeah, it's really, but So I guess I should at least look through them, or at least grab one of the books I made and flip through it again. I gotta find that hardcover book. It's my favorite rendition of that series.
Where did you print it?
Hardcover book from Blurb. And it's I think an 8x8 or 6x6 square. And so all the other printings I did were double-sided. So, because 100, this was a smaller print size. But for this hardcover, I did it all single 1 page per photo. And so it's really thick, and I printed it on a matte paper, which I think is one of my favorite ways to do prints, even in the darkroom. It's definitely my favorite version of that series is that book.
Have we seen that stuff somewhere?
The 100 Strangers?
Yeah. Other than your website or something like that, or
it was on my website. I don't have one anymore. It's
okay.
I took it down. I think it's still lingering in Flickr land, which I couldn't even know if I could point you to it at this moment. I think if you search Canadian portrait just on Flickr, you'd probably it would still come up. That's where the project initiated on Flickr. I imagine there still is a 100 Strangers group, that's sort of the support group for people wanting to do it. But yeah, so that was that project. But 10 years, it's a
long time, my friend.
It's a frightening thing to be able to say.
I know. Yeah, I think.
Even the job I left, I'd left 7 months short of 20 years, which is also a disturbing thing to think about.
I was going to say, I just got, it was 2013 where I started my association with Brick, the place that I do my freelance video work and teaching. So I started there in 2013. And it's like, you know what? 10 years is a chunk of time. Just,
yeah.
I was about to turn 50. Now I'm about to turn 60. Yes, go ahead, smile, Ward.
Hey, I'm right there with you. We're only a few months apart.
I know, we're the same age. I know. Oh, man.
Ward's got the Santa beard going on for those
right. And it has a lovely texture.
Yeah, I was thinking like I should grow a Santa beard too, but I can't stand a beard. You guys with the beards, all three of you got I don't know how you get past a couple of weeks. I'm sitting there like scratching like mad. So, well, I know we're getting on time here, so I want to kind of circle and wrap this up a little bit. But I mean, I guys can talk to you guys for another hour and stuff, but I don't know who's going to listen to us for another hour. Let me just start or finish by saying, what was I going to say? I totally lost my train of thought. This is what happens when I turn almost 60. We were talking about journals and dark rooms and Mark's work, and I lost it. So, Ward, you're going to have to help me.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, this is
legacy. I don't know.
We've gone on long enough. Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up. I mean, I'm really grateful you guys joined us for this episode, and I kind of like that it's like I didn't want to make a big deal of it, other than the fact that it's 200 episodes. Although I was saying this last week that my hosting company thought 2 episodes ago were my 200th episode, just because I think I had a couple of extra small ones, and so they're like, "Congratulations, 200 episodes! You want to download the badge and stuff like that?" I'm like, eh. But now I can. Now I'll put the badge up. I think we got 200 legitimate episodes. And I'm, it's sort of like when I have a big birthday, or for me, like I kind of don't want to make a big deal about it, although that is a big deal, and there's an accomplishment. And I think, I don't think I could have done this without all you guys and everybody in our Discord and support for the stuff that Ward and I are doing, and before that, and just supporting me as well over the stuff that I've been going through, and allowing me to support you guys. There's something about being on the other side of it too that makes it worth it. And I think the show that we've put together here, may not be the most popular photography podcast. I'm not out to make it popular. I just enjoy talking about photography, and I'm enjoying that there are people who like listening to this, and what we have to say. And so,
I think it's a little bit different than any other photography podcast. Just the content is different. It's not. We're not doing gear reviews. We're not doing.
Well, I was going to say I'm pretty disappointed that there's no gear reviews. There's no gear talk, and like
I can wave something in the camera and say I want to review this. I'll do that. I have no. Well, yeah, I have nothing to. I got a knife here. I could review my fountain pens, but nobody really cares about that. But yeah, you guys, all of you, and for those of the unusual collective who weren't able to join us tonight, and then everybody else are the listeners who support the show just in dropping us a line now and then. It's really kind of special for you guys to do that, and keeps me going for doing this, and I love being able to talk talk about this stuff with you, and we're all sort of in the similar wavelengths. So thank you for that, Dave. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ward.
Back at you.
Yeah.
So let's do the round table here. Mark, is there any place that we can find you? Like, would you say Flickr is probably the place to go look for Canadian portraits?
I'm still have my Instagram.
You do?
I think
Okay.
I
What is it?
posted 2 new photos in the last 18 months. It's Canadian Portraitist is my Instagram.
All right, cool.
That my new office gives me a front row seat to the sunrises in the morning. So there's been some spectacular ones here in the last few weeks. So even though it's like taking the same photo, it's like, no, it's just so, like this morning or yesterday morning was that classic blue and orange.
Yeah.
I didn't post it, but anyway,
Cool.
Canadian Portraits on Instagram.
Thank you. And Dave, please tell us where you can find you.
Probably.
Start thinking, where are you going to
Yeah,
find
what
you?
I think the easiest thing to do, if I spend most of my time over on Substack these days, a little bit on Instagram and stuff with the book discussions and stuff, but easiest place would just be substack.com/ and then the @ symbol Dave Szweduik, SZWEDUIK. That'll get you to both my newsletters and the photography stuff, and there's links there for social medias and all that stuff. So that's probably the easiest place.
Cool. I'll put all the links in the show notes. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ward, where are we looking for you?
Well, you can find me on Vero on Twitter at WRosinPhoto, on Instagram as Ward Rosin Fine
Try not
Art.
to sound too excited about it. Sorry.
On Facebook, I'm Ward Rosin Photo. And my website is rosin.ca. That's rosin.ca. And our unofficial sponsor for the show
Unofficial sponsor
is Ornis Photo, ORNIS.photo. That's where you can find me. And Antonio, where can we find you in the internet?
Yeah. So, Instagram, wonderful, at AM Rosario Photo. I'm looking at these places. I'm like, I haven't gone on Flickr or Twitter or whatever we call it now forever, but it's AM Rosario there. My website's amrosario.com. Our website, streetshots.photography. And because Substack is becoming a thing, and actually I did get a newsletter out recently, so join our Substack at streetshots.substack.com. That's becoming such a big thing these days. Maybe we'll do a talk about Substack and photography one day. Anyway, and if you want to support the show by buying us a coffee, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario. We put the show together. We don't have any advertising, the whole thing. We're just doing this. But you know what? If you just reach out to us and tell us what you like about the show, what you don't like, or just, give us a suggestion, that goes a long way, So please let us know what you like and what you don't like.
The Trent Park show was a listener,
the Trent Park show,
listener suggestion.
Yeah, totally a listener thing. Yeah. So reach out that way. And look, guys, thank you for being with us on our 200th show. It's nice to have you guys with us, and it's good to see you guys. Unfortunately, the podcast you can't see you, but I can see you guys. But,
Unfortunately, you have to look at me, but no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it was like I turned. You know what? I turned off my self view as I don't want to look at myself. So I'd rather look at you guys than look at myself. But I guess that's across the board. So anyway, promises. We'll want to get some guests on. I got a couple. We've got, like I said, a long list of people. So we'll see what we can do for the year. So anyway, guys, have a good night, and thanks for joining. And all the folks who are listening, we'll probably see you in a couple of weeks, right? All right. Take care.
All right. Good night.
Good night.